My name is Lydia Crane. I'm 70 years old. And I've spent most of this year sitting very still, trying to understand why a life that looks so full on paper feels so quiet now. I'm not telling this because I need to be heard. I'm telling it because there isn't much time left to keep pretending I don't know the answer. Mornings are the hardest. Not because of pain. Pain you get used to. It's the silence. The way the house wakes up without anyone else noticing. The kettle clicks off by itself. The floorboards creak even when no one's walking on them. There's no rush anymore, and that's what makes it unbearable. I spent decades wishing for slower days. Now they stretch out in front of me like something I don't quite deserve. I used to think peace would arrive eventually. That it was something you earned. That if you did enough, proved enough, endured enough, it would settle into your bones like a reward. It never did. At 70, the achievements don't argue back. They just sit there. Framed certificates. Old plaques in a drawer. Stories no one asks me to tell anymore. They don't hurt. But they don't comfort either. I'm telling you this from the end of things. Or close enough to it that the difference doesn't matter much. Friends are dying now. Not dramatically. Just quietly disappearing from Christmas card lists. Doctors speak more slowly. Conversations drift toward logistics. There's a sense that everyone is tidying up, even if they don't say so. When you reach this age, you stop imagining the future as something large. It becomes a narrow hallway. Still yours. Still real. Just shorter than you thought it would be. I didn't know that when I was young. None of us does. In my 20s, I was certain I was doing things right. Not brilliantly. Just responsibly. I had a job that impressed my parents. I lived in a sensible apartment. I woke up early, drank bad coffee, and believed that discipline was the same thing as purpose. I worked in operations for a manufacturing firm. Nothing glamorous, but stable. That mattered then. Stability felt like love. Like safety. Like proof that I wasn't wasting my life the way some people warned women like me we would. I told myself I'd focus on living later. Later was a wide, forgiving word back then. Later could absorb anything I postponed. I wasn't unhappy. That's important. I wasn't miserable. I laughed. I went out on Fridays sometimes. I dated men who made sense on paper. I called my mother every Sunday. I just wasn't present. Not really. I was always slightly ahead of myself, planning, adjusting, improving. Even my joys were managed. When I got promoted in my early 30s, people congratulated me like I'd crossed some invisible finish line. I remember smiling and nodding and thinking, good, now I can relax. I didn't. The responsibilities multiplied quietly. Longer hours. More expectations. Fewer excuses. I started eating dinner at my desk. Started answering emails on weekends. Started saying things like, after this quarter, and once things settle down. Things never settled down. I married Daniel when I was 34. He was kind. Reliable. We met through work, which should have been a warning. We spoke the same language of deadlines and deliverables. We bonded over mutual exhaustion. We told ourselves we were building something together. A future. A life. That's what people say when they're both too tired to notice what they're not talking about. Our conversations were practical. Who would pick up groceries? Which bills were due? What color to paint the spare room? We were good at functioning. We weren't good at stopping. I don't blame him. I really don't. He wanted what I wanted. Or what we thought we wanted. Forward motion. Proof. Progress. Love was something we assumed would fill in the gaps later. By my 40s, I was respected. That's the word people used. Lydia's solid. She's dependable. You can count on her. No one ever said, she seems peaceful. I missed birthdays. Not all of them. Just enough that people stopped expecting me. I missed dinners that turned into stories I was never part of. I missed small moments that didn't announce themselves as important. My father died when I was 46. Heart attack. Suddenly, they said, though nothing feels sudden when you replay it enough times. I flew in for the funeral. Stayed 3 days. Took calls from work in the hallway. I told myself he would have understood. He valued work. He raised me to be responsible. He would have been proud. Maybe he was. I'll never know. We didn't talk much toward the end. We assumed there would be time. Always time. After the funeral, I went back to my life and felt strangely proud of how well I held everything together. I wore that pride like armor. It didn't keep anything out. Daniel and I drifted without drama. No fights. No betrayals. Just a quiet recognition that we were better colleagues than companions. We divorced when I was 52. Amicable. Efficient. We split books and furniture and wished each other well. People told me it was brave. Starting over at that age. It didn't feel like starting over. It felt like admitting something had already ended a long time ago. I doubled down on work after that. Not because I loved it. Because it was familiar. because it didn't ask anything personal from me. Achievements kept coming. Awards. Titles. A corner office I barely noticed because I was always facing a screen. I told myself I was contributing, that I mattered. What I didn't notice was how small my life had become outside of that contribution. Friends stopped calling as much. Not out of cruelty, out of habit. They built lives that included presence, children, traditions, messy kitchens. I became someone you invited when schedules aligned, not someone you counted on. I told myself I preferred it that way. That's the lie I lived with longest. The cost wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself. It showed up as empty weekends I filled with errands. During holidays, I spent time working because it felt easier than choosing where to go. As a growing discomfort with unstructured time, I didn't realize I was afraid of stillness. When my mother got sick, I visited when I could. I sent money. I coordinated care from a distance. I was helpful. I wasn't there. She died when I was 60. I was holding her hand. I remember thinking how small her hand felt. How thin. I remember realizing I had no idea what her favorite song was, or what she regretted, or whether she felt loved by me at the end. I had been a good daughter, just not a close one. That's when the questions started. Quietly. Late at night. What had all of this been for? Who was I when no one needed my output? Retirement came at 65. People threw a party. Speeches were made. They listed my accomplishments like a resume read aloud. I smiled. I hugged people. I took home a watch I didn't need. The next Monday, I woke up and had nowhere to be. I thought I would feel relieved. Free. I felt unmoored. Without the structure, the noise faded. And underneath it was a loneliness I didn't know how to name. Not the kind you fix by calling someone. The kind that comes from realizing you don't know who to call. Achievements don't sit with you at night. They don't ask how you're feeling. They don't remember the sound of your laugh. I had assumed peace would arrive when the striving ended. Instead, the striving had been what distracted me from the absence of peace all along. The turning point wasn't dramatic. No sudden collapse. No tragic revelation. It was a Tuesday afternoon at the grocery store. I ran into a woman I'd worked with for years. She asked how retirement was treating me. I opened my mouth to answer and realized I had nothing rehearsed. No story. No progress report. I don't know, I said. She nodded kindly and moved on. I stood there by the apples and felt something crack open. Not loudly, just enough to let the truth in. I had built a life that made sense to other people, and I had postponed living inside it. There are things that can't be fixed now. Relationships that have moved on without me. Years that are gone in a way memory can't replace. Versions of myself I never let exist. I can't go back and sit longer at my mother's kitchen table. I can't show up for my younger self and tell her to stop rushing. I can't make peace arrive by sheer force of understanding. All I can do is tell the truth while I'm still here. If you're listening to this and you're younger than I am, I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't know your life. I only know mine. I wish I had known that peace doesn't come from finishing. It comes from being where you are while you're there. From choosing presence even when productivity feels safer. I wish I had known that there isn't always more time. That later is not guaranteed. That love erodes quietly when it's treated as something you'll return to. I don't hate my life. I don't regret everything. I'm grateful for what I had the strength to build. I just understand now why it never brought peace. The days I have left are smaller. I fill them gently. Walks. Reading. Writing this. Sometimes, calling someone is just to hear a voice. I'm learning how to sit still without apologizing for it. That's all there is now. And it's enough. It has to be. If this meant something to you, I'm glad. If it didn't, that's okay too. I'm 70 years old. This is the truth I finally stopped running from.